So hello everybody, and welcome to this session today on how to get started on finding a NED or a trustee role remotely. My name is Heather White. I shall do a formal introduction in a second. Just a few ground rules which I thought might be useful. So first of all, this session is being recorded, so then you can then listen to it later on. And then the second thing is that we will be doing a Q&A. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a couple of boxes. You've got the chat room, so you're very welcome to use the chat room to have a chat amongst yourselves. But if you've got a specific question you want to ask me, can you put that question into the Q&A box, so then I don't have to scroll through everything to sort of see to find the questions. And then what I'll do is I'll do this presentation bit first, put your questions in, and then we will come to that towards the end. So my plan is to present for around about 30 minutes. So if you've got pen and paper by the side of you, that'd be great. And then as you think about your question, put it into the Q&A box, and then we can then come to those, and I can then cover off as many questions as possible. We will finish just before 1 o'clock, however. Okay, all right then, so welcome to this session today. I'm seriously excited about working with you as well. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Heather White, and I run a business called Smarter Networking. And what I do is I specialize in 4 areas. So this is boardroom matchmaking. I teach people networking skills, personal brand, and LinkedIn. Now, the reason why I end up looking at or helping people to find board experience opportunities is because for the last 20 years, I've been teaching people how to network and build their brand. And one of the questions that comes up so often is, I'm looking for my first non-exec role. How do I go about doing that? Now, as you can imagine, being a professional networker that I am, is I was like going, okay, well, go here, try this, try that, speak to this person and whatever. So I'm a natural connector. So I was then making all these different connections. And because I kept thinking, there must be an easier way of doing this. So what I did was I did some research onto how the recruitment market works to become a non-exec. And I thought, God, this is messy. And I said, there must be another way of doing this. So eventually I ended up creating a service called Boardroom Ready. So what I do is I place senior executives who are looking for board experience in order to get that onto their CVs. So then they can get either an internal board director role, or they can actually go and find non-exec roles. So as a result of that, I know lots of different bits and bobs around the whole recruitment sort of process and networking part, etc., etc. And that's what I want to share with you guys today. So my aim is to make this as practical and as practical as I can possibly make it, really. And I think one of the things is and when you get started on this particular part, is that there are so many different places you can come in to start on your journey on how to become a non-exec or a trustee. And you're going to get so many different pieces of advice. So what I thought I would do is sort of try and strip it down a little bit and then just sort of see how this can work for you. Now, I want to start off with a poll. So fingers at the ready. I want to find out, where are you at the moment with your journey? So I've got 4 questions here I'd like you to have a quick look at. You can only answer one of these. So can you now start clicking away on where are you at on your journey to become this non-exec? So if you can click away, that'll be, oh, you are clicking away, jolly good, marvellous. This is really interesting. I love doing polls. They're such fun. You learn such interesting things about people, especially, you know, I'm a visual person. You know, it's like my whole life is all around being out networking, doing teas and coffees and everything. So I find this whole engaging with people via the Zoom part fascinating. But of course, you just can't see everybody. I can't sort of get to you, so to speak, as I would do if I was having coffee with you. So this is really quite interesting, having a sense of who you are through the polls. Right, okay, I think we're all done. Jolly good. Right, so let me just end that there. And I'm going to share results. So I think I'm going to find this interesting. Okay, so what we've got is that we've got equal first place. A lot of you are only just thinking about it, and a lot of you just don't know how to get started. You're in the right place. And then I've got smaller percentages on those who've got started. And congratulations to those who've actually got your first role and looking for your second one. This will still be very useful for you. So, okay, we're at a very early stage. Right, so let me then get rid of that. Jolly good. All right then, so let's go into how does all of this stuff work, and see what I can then sort of share with you on that basis. Right, so hang on. Let me get the screen working. There we go. Now, in order for anyone who's looking to start this journey on becoming a non-exec or a trustee, I tell you what I'm going to do, guys, is rather than keep using the word non-exec and trustee, can I just use the word non-exec, but you know I actually mean the whole gambit. I hope that's okay. But the way that we start, and every time I speak to somebody who wants to come and join the Boardroom Ready program, the first place I start is, what's your motivation? Trust me, guys, on this is that it takes time and energy. This is not a simple process on, so like if you're going for a full-time job, the process is a little bit simpler. When you're looking at becoming a non-exec, the process is a lot more tricky, it's a bit messy. So understanding your motivation is going to be really important. What's going to drive you? Because this is going to take time and energy to do this. And that's not just in the finding, but it's also the doing side of it as well. So I want you to think about, what's your motivation? What is it that you find interesting? And on top of that is, what do you want to experience? So again, when I'm interviewing any of my guys, these are the first two questions I always start off with. And then based on that, looking for the experience that somebody wants. So say, for example, they want to experience something entrepreneurial, based in London in manufacturing or whatever else it's going to be. It makes, therefore, finding the opportunities a lot easier because you've got an automatic filter. So your motivation is important, what's going to drive you. Now, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of people about why they want to do this. And there's sort of things like, I want to make a contribution, I want to give something back. Vocational drives are really important. They want to increase their experience, their expertise. They want to share stuff. They want to test out, I've learned lots and lots of different things. I now want to test this out. I want to sort of see, does this, how I apply myself in this industry or this sector, can I then replicate that in a different one? So what's your motivation? What's your reason why? And as I go through this, I want you to keep on refining that, because every time you hit a brick wall, and trust me, you're going to hit a lot of brick walls during this process, you come back to your motivation, your reason why. If we then look at what you want to experience, and the more that you can chunk that down into bite-sized pieces, then that makes it a whole lot easier when you then come to do your searching as well, because you can quickly filter out stuff as much as filter things in. So that's the first place that we're actually going to start, okay? So, and you're going to get a copy of these slides along with this presentation, so therefore you can come back to this question. Once you know what your motivation is and the experience that you're looking to gain, the next part that then comes in is to understand, how does this market work? The more you can understand how the market works, it makes it easier. One, when it comes to the energy that you're going to put into this, it makes it easier to go, right, okay, well, I can ignore that part because this is where I need to concentrate my time and energy. And then also how you go about marketing yourself as well makes sense. Looking at then how the market works. Now, this is really broad terms, and it depends on who you are, the experience that you've got, as to which markets will make more sense. If you look at how, when people are looking to recruit a non-exec or a trustee, then this is sort of how it works. If you're looking at the FTSE or even top-end AIM, the majority of that will go through recruiters. That means you're looking at people like Odgers and Korn Ferry and all those really big names. So if your status, your experience, your expertise lends itself to that market, then you know that your time and energy has to go into the recruiters. There lies a problem in itself, but that's where you need to end up. If you're looking at middle to low AIM, in terms of the size of the businesses, then a lot of that, whilst they still do use recruiters, but it then starts getting much more towards the networks, being known in certain communities. If you're looking at SMEs, it's a lot of this will actually be through the networks that you'll have, or they have. And I put down a note here as well, sort of saying, some of you may already have discovered, and if not, I will show you in a second anyway, there are quite a few platforms that have been developed of late that actually they promote themselves as being able to sort of like show you where the NED and the trustee jobs are. But of course, a lot of the SMEs and a lot of the AIM listed probably won't know as much about those platforms at this particular point. So that new technology that's coming through is still trying to catch up with what the market is actually looking at. So whilst you can go onto these platforms and you can find a whole variety of jobs, and I'll come on to that, just be aware that not all of those will be on there because they won't know that the platforms actually exist. So you've got one part which is how recruitment works. Now, do I have an opinion on, do I think it's right that people recruit through their networks versus should they all go onto a platform or a recruiter? I do have a bit of an opinion. When you look at the main reasons why most of them won't use recruiters is the cost. They are exorbitant. I can't tell you guys. So I was talking to a recruiter the other day. Now they recruit, 10, 12 NEDs a year, more upper AIM, upper charity, upper SMEs and AIM listed. They were charging something like £60,000 for a non-exec, and yet the fee that the non-exec gets paid around about 40,000, but their fee to find this individual would be about 60,000. So when you start looking at the cost of recruitment, it explains why platforms will eventually really take off, but two, why most people use their networks, because it's a silly amount of money. So do I have an opinion? I just look at how the market works and then I work the market. There's a challenge here for every single person, and we come back to motivation, is that the problem is that if you've got to then build these networks, how do you get to these networks? Which again, time's not going to allow us to go deep into that, but we will touch on it. The next bit I also want to quickly cover off is your competition. We come back to motivation again. Is that at the moment, the competition for becoming a non-exec and or a trustee is quite fierce. The reason for that is because at the moment, there's this massive surge of people wanting to do this stuff. When Women on Boards did this marketing campaign to drive out, profile and let's change the way we do things and just do this disruption, fantastic. But the problem then happened is that there was such good marketing on this, it just raised the whole game. So whilst you've got the baby boomers coming towards the end, bless them, us, me, so they're still taking up a lot of roles, but they will be eventually being sort of pushed out, so the next generations will come through. And whilst you've got wonderful women now coming into the market, thank goodness, wonderful stuff. However, the biggest change in the market is the age group. And I don't know how old you guys are, and I wasn't going to do a poll on this because that might not be quite appropriate. But when I talk to people nowadays, it's more that they are, 40s. Whereas before, you wouldn't start thinking about becoming a non-exec till you're in your, say, mid-50s. So what's happened is you've now got 15 years more of people coming onto the market that wasn't there before, plus the women, and also your portfolio workers as well. So this is the competition, which is why we always go back to motivation, motivation, motivation. However, now that we can get into, once you understand how the markets work and you understand how what your competition is, now we can then start driving down into, well, what are you going to do? When you look at what could you do, the reason why I think it's important is to look at this as a journey. Now, there's about 60, 70 of you on the call at the moment. I'm going to sort of say that there's a reasonable majority of you in your sort of 40s, and there's a number of you in your 50s and all this sort of stuff. The earlier you start on your journey, then look at lots of different options to gain experience, okay, to get to the ultimate, whatever the ultimate looks like for you. So this is where I put down where you could become a non-exec, a trustee, a governor, you could join a committee. There's lots of different ways that you can gain initial experience in order to help you to gather that as you go on. When I talk to a lot of my portfolio chairs or non-execs, I say to them all, how did you get started? And a lot of them will actually get started by becoming a trustee or joining a committee in order to start to gain some insights, some confidence, some understanding, some know-how. There is nothing in the rule books, guys, that says you can't just become a non-exec straight away. Nothing in the rule books whatsoever. So don't let anyone tell you that you have to become a trustee first, or you have to do a committee first, or anything like that. What I'm looking at is the journey to become a non-exec could include other dimensions, but there's nothing to stop you from just becoming a non-exec. It's having the right networks and the right brand out there in order to get those connections going. But there are options here for you, which I think is really important. So if the elusive non-exec role takes too long, because it can take, I don't know, sometimes it can take 18 months, 2 years to find the right non-exec role. The reason why is because, well, you've got to find the right one. You've got to get shortlisted. You've got to get onto it. There's all of those different complications that sort of come around it. Is this the right company? Is this the right culture fit? Blah, blah. So there's lots of reasons why it can take a lot of time in order to get your first non-exec role. And that's why during this journey, it's important that you can look at other things to keep gaining that. And some of these other things can afford you some really interesting networks as well. So consider your journey and that there are different things that you can actually do and look at. And all of these are great fun too, really interesting. Now, moving now into recruiters, okay? And what are recruiters looking for? Now, recruiters could be the chief exec and the chair, as much as it could be a recruiter. So when people are looking to recruit people onto their boards, there's a few things here that I think are really interesting. I mean, we work with, at the moment, I've got, I don't know, about 30 boards that we're working with at the moment. When I look at what do they want to add value to their board, I've broken it down into a couple of criteria here that might make it interesting for you to consider yourself and how you could make a contribution. Now, these are broad terms, but I want to start you thinking around what is your brand, your message, when you're networking, what are you going to share with people and tell people? So one of the things that comes across, well, the two that are really important, especially at the moment, is industry and or subject matter experts. So quite often, most industries recruit from somebody within that industry or around the peripheral of that industry. So one of the things that you want to look at when you look at the experience that you want to gain is what is your expertise, either from your industry or your subject matter, that you think would actually work quite well within those industries. Now, I actually do think I like cross-industry options because I think fresh thinking, fresh eyes is a really good thing, but a lot of boards will actually go for safety. And if they're looking for a newbie, someone who's never done a non-exec role before, then their security will come from, well, you know my industry or you know the subject. So those two things are really important. So when we start looking in a second how you would then take yourself to market, then these two bits will actually be quite important. The third one I've put down is connector. And this is somebody who's got a black book and or knows key people in the industry or the subject matter that they can bring into the board as well. What you've got to look at with a board, whether or not this is a trustee or a non-exec, is that you're going to be sitting on the board for up to 3 years. So therefore, you have to show longevity rather than a shortness of your contribution. The boards are driven initially by, we have a gap and I need X, Y, Z. I mean, this is notwithstanding that some people are looking for the generalists. Some people are looking for those who bring strategic thinking and all those sort of things. So there are quite a few variables, and I'll show you in a sec something that you could do that might help you to think how you position yourself. But in essence, these three things here are certainly at a newbie stage are the things that they would be looking for. And so you now got to look at how do you promote yourself that way as well. So moving into the practicalities of it. So what you've got is, this is how the market works. This is your competition. Okay. What are boards looking for? And then we start then looking at, well, where can you register? And then how do you then start to decipher how you put yourself across? So what you can do now is, when you're networking or building relationships remotely, is what you can do is that you can go on to certain platforms and register. Some of the platforms you're going to have to pay for, some of the platforms are free. So for example, Dynamic Boards is the only platform I've come across so far that only put onto their website paid non-exec work or trustee works, providing there's a fee involved. All you have to do is just register, and then you can just go onto the platform. I was on there this morning, and they've got quite a few jobs up, about 40, 50 jobs up there. Really cool. Women on Boards, they are, and there's a number of platforms like Women on Boards. What they do is that they scalp or stream, whatever the expression is, from the internet. So they will have the charity stuff as well as that they will have some of the paid stuff. So you've got a whole big mishmash around on Women on Boards, but it's good quality stuff. And then of course you can then go onto LinkedIn, where you can put up your alerts, and that will help. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send on to We Are the City. I've got a list of different platforms and different organisations that you can actually go and register with. It's not the most up to date, but it certainly will give you quite a lot of information and save you hours of time to find these things. The caveat I'm going to put in here, guys, when you are looking to register onto these platforms, I always challenge, some of them will want a fee. And I think you've got to really look carefully at what do they offer for that fee. So for example, if you go onto Women on Boards, I think it's something like £145 for the year. I think if you go on to NED on Board, who's also got a platform, you know, I can't remember how much they are, but they're like roughly the same. So you wouldn't need to do both. But what you could do is say register with Dynamics on Boards, which is free and it's all the paid stuff. But if you want to experiment with other trustee roles, then Women on Boards is equally as good. But there are a few others as well. I'll come back to this slide. You can also register with more specific boards. So if you are interested in the public appointments or charities or the NHS, there are specific websites just for some of these more specific opportunities. So you've got those things that I think that you can do. And like I say, I've got a list that are sent across that can then be sort of sent out as well. Now, I want to come back to LinkedIn just for a second. If you decide that you want to use LinkedIn as one of your tools to find opportunities, and it's a great way of doing this, you just set up your alerts. But one of the things is, so you've got alerts that you can set up that push stuff to you. But should you want to be found by a recruiter, the reason why I've called this one Lost and Found is because recruiters are always looking for those that have, sorry, let me do that one again. LinkedIn is an algorithm, right? It's just full of keywords. When recruiters who have the license are looking to find people with certain experience, if you don't have those keywords in your LinkedIn, you won't be found. It's as simple as that. So the reason why I've got here is what I suggest that you do to get your LinkedIn so that you could be found if you're hoping a recruiter is going to find you. So what you're going to do is I want you to download a couple of ideal non-exec jobs or trustee jobs. Okay. Then the old-fashioned way we used to do this is that you then highlight all the strong keywords. So they might have a strategy and innovation or health and safety or regulatory or whatever those keywords are for the type of person that they're looking for, and the work that you're looking for. What you do is you then grab those keywords, shove them into your LinkedIn, okay, especially under the skills section and the about. Now, even if you don't have non-exec experience, but you have the experience of what these jobs are looking for, as long as you drive it towards the use future tense, so I am looking for, or my expertise includes, then that's the way that you'll get found by recruiters. I hope that makes sense. You might have questions on that later on, which we will come back to. So this is what I mean by lost and found. If you want to be found by a recruiter on LinkedIn without the right keywords in your profile, you won't be found. It's simple. Okay, now then. And so I need to add there as well. If a recruiter is looking for someone with non-exec experience, you've got to have the words non-exec in your LinkedIn, on your LinkedIn. Otherwise, again, you don't come up. But again, what you do is you'd frame it and sort of say, looking for non-exec stuff. Or you just put in the word non-exec in your skill sets and also about your about. Don't worry, no one's going to do you for saying something that you haven't got. It's just being found. Right, okay, so that covers that one. Now, the other thing that you can do whilst you are on this journey is you could, if you wanted to, register or get onto some of these different training programs. And I've put up 3 different organizations here. There are others, and this list I'll send out includes some of the other ones as well. If you go for training, I can probably honestly say that is not going to get you a job. What it will do is probably build your confidence and give you a language that enables you to have maybe more of a conversation, a more educated conversation, a more informed conversation when you are talking to these other people. But having a certificate in and of itself will not persuade a board that you are the ideal person. The bit that the board is always looking for, we've got to come back to, what's the board want? They want someone with the right fit. They want somebody with the right experience, expertise, the connectors. That's what they want. But if having training gives you that confidence, gives you some more inside knowledge, then some of these things are good things to do. Or find yourself a mentor. You know, if you know a non-exec, go and have a chat with them and get into the language. That's, you know, when I first started down this journey, I didn't have a clue. So I'd go to non-exec events and I would listen to what people said, how they spoke, the language that they used, the things that were important. I then started doing my research around that. When I got my research done, I was like going, oh, okay, so now I can have a fairly educated conversation. And yet, and I'll be honest, I've never sat on a board. I've sat on committees and stuff. I have no personal interest in sitting on a board. I love making connections. That's my thing. So anyway, training or mentors are a really good thing to do. Now it comes down to networking. So what you've got is you've got your motivation, you've got your experience that you're thinking about getting. You know how the recruitment market in principle works. You know your competition is. The way to network, to do all this remotely, is then you go onto these different platforms. You can register on those. Be careful about the money. Look at some of the training. That's all jolly good. Go and talk to some of the people that you know. Start building those up. And then, of course, everything else then comes down to your networking. This is what I mean by motivation, guys. It takes time and energy to do this. So what I've done here is I've written down the most obvious people that you need to build relationships with. So what I've got down here is the image of 2 people talking to each other, because you need to be talking to each other, to ask, to share. One of the things that's really important, you've got to tell people what you want. A lot of people won't see us as board material. It just doesn't always enter their heads. So what you've got to do is everyone you talk to, you need to sort of say to them, I'm looking to become a trustee, I'm looking to become a non-exec or a governor, or I want to sit on a committee, I want to volunteer, I want to do some stuff. Tell people what you want. And then using something like LinkedIn and these other platforms, where then you can then set up your alerts, you can put in your filters, and then stuff hopefully will then come to you. I always sort of think apply, because I like one of my ladies who's on the program, she applied for a job, she didn't get it, but once she'd applied for it, this was a non-exec role, once she applied for it, she's going, oh gosh, that's definitely not for me. But on paper it looked lovely, but when she sort of got behind it, it was like, ooh, no, definitely not. So keep on applying. Don't look for the right one. Look at the experience that you can gather along your way. Right, so these are the networks that are really important. All right, so there's my details, Now then, before we get to that one, so now I want to come on to, here we go, I want to look at your questions. Let me just check on time. Oh, we're doing well. Right then, so let's have a look. Okay. All right, so Sonia. Hello, Sonia. How you doing? Okay, I'm a manager. I've never had direct reports. Freelance for a long time, but at 46, Seela, I told you. See, I got a lot of my 40s out there. A stack of experience, I bet you have. I want to become a NED as a career step and how out to cause which needs my skill. So I won't be considered senior enough. Do you have any tips? Right. I think the challenge for anyone who is self-employed, and I think not age, I'm not worried about age. What I'm looking at is expertise in either subject or industry. I think those who are self-employed actually do face more of a struggle with getting a board role. And I think the reason for that is quite often it's to do with perception on someone who is self-employed being more of a consultant than being more of a strategic thinker. Now I'm generalizing a bit there, so Sonia, please don't hit me. So what it is what you've got to do is you've got to you've got to dig around inside of yourself quite a lot to say, right, okay, what is my industry expertise? What is my skill sets? What is my subject matter expertise? And that's what you've really got to broadcast and network yourself out there in. But I don't think it's going to be an easy journey because I'm not worried about that you haven't had direct reports, because people who are subject matter expertise can bring in a lot of quality stuff. Again, you've got to look at, depending on what your expertise is does it have longevity on a board? Sometimes people want to go and join a board because they want to influence, because they're thinking, they never think about this. HR people, for example, are they should be on the board because it's all about the whole way the culture works is driven by the board and everything, and so HR should be on it. But if the boards don't think HR should be on it, they won't be on it. So again, it's trying to find the angles that would actually work. Okay, Andrea, you're not being naive at all. AIM, what does AIM stand for? Alternative Investment Market. So it's just an abbreviation for a group of companies who are at early stages of their development, where they've got shareholders and stockholders and sort of things like that. You're asking me quite a technical question. I'm not too sure I know the full answer. But it stands for Alternative Investment Market, and SMEs is small to medium-sized enterprises. But a good question though, because acronyms should be explained. Okay, how do you know if your experience? Okay, so how do you know what your experience lends itself best to, i.e., middle to low AIM SME versus charities? I work for a fund manager and have a background in finance, but also run a small business. How do you know which sector you should target? Good question, actually, Has. Let's have a look. Right. Fund manager and have a background in finance, but also runs a small business. Right. So I think as you run a small business and your background is in finance and fund managers, I would have imagined that the easier route will be your small to medium-sized enterprises. Now, I don't know how small your business is or what size funds you've worked with. So if I look at the size of the funds you've worked at, the turnover of your business, and your financial responsibilities that you had, depends if this is inside your business or in the previous life, that would mean that businesses smaller than that would actually really benefit. That's not to sort of say the businesses bigger than those wouldn't also benefit, but I think you've probably got a limit to how far you could go up the size of those companies. Now, again, you've got to look at the experience and the expertise that a board needs is often greater than who they are at the moment. So when I'm doing placements, I look at the limit on that threshold, if you like, and then sort of say, right, okay, slightly above 10, 20% above, and certainly those below that responsibility would really benefit. And that would be probably a good way of looking at choosing your markets. Fund managers and finance, for a lot of small businesses, that would be very, very valuable. So I think they could be quite useful. Also look at the type of business that you currently run and see what relationship that has to other sectors. So you could look at and say, right, okay, could I without going against non-competitive sort of rules, is there another industry close to mine where it would be useful, and or what industries would benefit from maybe the regulatory sort of side of things that could be useful as well? Okay. MBA qualification, is it requirement? No, it's not. It doesn't have to be anything like that in the slightest. I'm an introvert. Hello. I mean, a huge disadvantage or something that can be used then. Do you know, I know lots of introverts who are brilliant at all of this stuff. So your introvertedness shouldn't get in the way. If you're introverted and shy, the shyness might sort of stop you a little bit. But the introvertedness, for me, I look at someone who's considered, thoughtful, analytic, and they bring a huge amount of qualities. I'm an extrovert, as you can probably tell, and I can bring maybe sort of like conceptual sort of stuff. But when I've got a thinker, so it depends on whether or not you mean introvert as in you're a thinker, or whether or not you mean introvert as in shy. Boards require energy, and it requires somebody to stand up because you've got to challenge. Even though you're bringing in your expertise, you have responsibility for the business. So if you are not comfortable challenging, your journey has to start sooner because you have to learn how to challenge. So it depends on what you mean by introverted. But the answer is any character can go on, providing they bring the right stuff with them that makes it relevant. So that's what I mean: expertise, connections, industry, thought, ideas, creativeness, whatever. Anonymous, right? Are there trainees or voluntary board positions where board position, and where would you find this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out via We Are the City a list of different places that you can have a look at, where you can find these board positions, the voluntary sort of stuff, because there are specific websites for the voluntaries. In fact, the voluntary stuff is much more easier as a market to get into, because one, they're screaming out for people, but two, they're much better organized, and most of those will go through a much more transparent recruitment process. Right, Lucy, as a mid-20-year-old, should I be looking to offer my experience which roles with a view to NED positions down the line? Ooh, that's gone. Ellie, do you want to put that one back? I've missed it. Yes, think a great answer. Jolly good. It's my pleasure. I've missed the 20-year-old one, Ellie.
You
at the top.
Read it out because it's still showing on mine, so I can read it out for you if you like.
Hang on. Yes, if you could. Yeah, I can't find it.
Okay, perfect. As a mid-20-year-old, should I be looking to offer my experience and insights in committee roles with a view to NED positions down the line? Experience is in haulage, food, startup, and energy trading.
Oh, lovely. Right, okay. I think I might have just found it right now. 20-year-olds, do you know, Lucy, I tell you what, there is a big drive now going on for bringing in younger thinking and younger generations, because they know that the boards are a bit towards the older side. They don't have the experience of the younger generation. So certainly when you look at it from going on to voluntary boards, committees, absolutely, I think you'll find that you'll be welcomed with open arms. So yeah, get yourself out there, start telling people what you want, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, actually. That younger generation is absolutely brilliant. Fantastic, go for it. Boardroom.co is not working, is that correct? Should it be? No, it's definitely a .co. Have no idea why that's not working. We'll look into that and come back to you. But it is there, Boardroom, yeah. Was it Boardroom Ready? Have I got my own website wrong? Type in boardroomready.co, see if that works. God, I'm really bad at this now. Right, okay then. Do you have any tips for public sector, health trusts and NEDs? Not quite sure what you mean, Tamzine. Do you want to come back to me with pulling that out a little bit so I understand what you mean? 20 years as farmers, right, Sassy, I love the name. I have 20 years experience in pharmaceutical industry strategy development, supporting behavioural change. How can I market your skills? Right, okay, so Pharmaceutical industry, fantastic. Strategy development, great. Leadership development and support and behavioural change. Now, this comes back to, and I don't know if you're HR, but in that broad space, one of the challenges with boards is that they may not see the longevity, 3-year relationship, you being on a board, around leadership and behaviour. They just don't see it quite like that. Now, don't shout at me because I've tried lots of times to place HR onto boards, and certain size boards or certain types of businesses will not entertain it at all. So what you've got to do here, you've got to box really carefully. So you've got to look at a certain type, so pharmaceuticals, so if you want to stay in that and around that, those types of industries, you've got to look for companies very carefully on those who are going through culture change or those who are going through big leadership decisions. The challenge is that this is when they start maybe looking at you more as a consultant versus somebody who's got non-exec, bringing non-exec skill sets to them. So what you want to do is you've got to think about widening your own skill sets to go and join committees and trustees, to actually have on your CV other insights, other experience to add to. Because when I just based on what you've just said, and I know this is quite narrow in a Q&A sort of bit, so if I just sort of take out strategy, leadership, behavioural change, it is not enough for a board to go, that's skill sets I need for the next 3 years. So if you then also have got trustee experience or committee experience, or you're well connected or whatever else it is, so you've got to shape that up into something much more rounded to actually be useful to a board. That sounds hard, but I think the reality of this, for certain types of skill sets, you've got to have that rounded understanding in order to be attractive to come sit on a board. So I hope that's useful. Okay, Olga, I have no charity experience, but would be interested in becoming a trustee. Yeah, would it be possible someone has no experience with the sector? Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do, Olga, is when I send out this list, just go on to a couple of the websites. They're not going to worry that you don't have experience. This is when the voluntary market is much more open than the non-exec market for those who don't have experience. So you'll have no problems at all. What you've got to look at is what inspires you. What is it that you would like to experience? What's the vocational part that really draws you? And then when you go on to these jobs for charities and the voluntary sort of sector, you're just going to find lots and lots that you can actually go and consider. So don't worry about that. You'll be absolutely fine. But you still got to get onto the right sites, which we will send you the stuff on. Okay. On a board seat, looking for a second role, I have not signed up for agreement, but this is implied. Do I need to look into that? Yes, you do. That's G Truco. Yes, you do, because the other board may not be open because you are from the same sector. So what I find with my portfolio workers is that some of them will be sector-based. So let's look at, say, finance, but there's so many different aspects within finance. As long as it has a non-competitive aspect, then you'll be absolutely fine. But otherwise the other board won't be interested, and you'll lose face with your other board, because obviously you're privileged to a lot of confidential information, and they want to safeguard that, which makes sense. So no, you'll need to look for a different part. Okay. Tammy sort of says it's best to start with a voluntary board position or prior to paid positions. Do you know, if you can get a paid one straight away, why not? There are no rules here in that sort of sense. If you've got the right experience and expertise, just go for it. If you're finding that you can't get the paid stuff simply because there's so much competition out there, or they don't see you quite in that right, then that's why you then look at this journey. You know, if you're in your 40s, you know, you've got another sort of 10, 15 years that you can really sort of start to gather some really useful experience. So no, you can go straight into paid stuff. It's just, it might take longer. That's all. Yeah, thank you very much. It's like Boardroom Ready. I really need to know my own website. Honestly, how bad is that? Right, thank you very much for that. So everybody, it's boardroomready.co. Right. Do you need to tell your current employer? Well, I think it's always worth telling them, because it starts them to see you in a different light and to open up their mindset towards that you want to, that you want to broaden yourself and everything. So I think it's a good thing to do. It's not a case of for a trustee role or a charity role, most companies won't have a problem with that at all. Some companies might have a problem with you becoming a non-exec. So for those of you who are looking at that, it's worthwhile talking to your employers because they might have a problem with that. But ask, and I'm sure you'll be fine, especially on the voluntary sort of stuff. Right, okay, here we go. Right, so tips for me looking to become a trustee or a NED in the public sector or health sector, 15 years experience in, Tassimi, you will find that, you should find that terribly easy. The list I'm going to send out will have links to public appointments and also the NHS website that's got the jobs. They do include the other jobs, but they include the non-exec stuff or going in as a trustee. The fact that you've got experience in strategy and governance and NHS should make you quite appealing, I'd have thought. So you should be fine. But again, you've just got to get onto those websites and you've just got to persevere. Right, P, Clarendon, trustee board. I'm on trustee board and other volunteers, my professional association. How do I make most of this to get a paid position? Good question. Right, when you are sitting on a voluntary committee of any type, what you want to do is you want to sort of sit back and go, right, what is the experience I need to gain in order to help me develop my non-exec career? So let's say, for example, you're weak on finance. Then what I would do is I would volunteer to take on the financial responsibilities. Let's say, for example, that you are, whatever you're weak on, see whether or not the voluntary committee has a role that you could do, or you could shadow somebody who's doing that role. Also look at the networks within the committee to see if there's something there that you can broaden out as well. And also look to see whether or not are there associated committees, voluntary groups to this organisation that you could then dovetail onto to grow and expand. So, for example, let's sort of say the size of the organisation is, I don't know, turns over 10 million, a million, or whatever. Is there an associated committee that you could also join that has a different dynamic? So is there a subcommittee, or is there another sister company that is bigger or wider or something else like that? That would sort of quite help as well. What you're looking to do is to put this onto your CV, and you're looking to take on certain projects within that then starts to demonstrate your ability to develop your skills and everything else that goes along with it. So that's how I would then look to develop it. It could be that you start off with a small one and then you go on to a bigger one. I think the challenge with all of these, though, is always time, the commitment that it takes to actually do this. But the more you share with people, I sit on a voluntary group, I'm looking for a non-exec role, then it just helps people to put you into that right sort of mindset. But we come back to one of my very first slides is what's the experience you want to gain? And then these committees or voluntary groups that you're sitting on, can you get that from them? If not, how do you instigate that in order for that to work? Okay, then Belle, why are companies asking for money upfront without anything? So these platforms, what they are, these membership groups run platforms with the jobs on, and they stream that from the internet. What they also do, they sell CV writing, training courses and other things as well. So they are still a profitable organisation. And what they're trying to do is to bring a service to those who are looking at these types of opportunities. The question I always have, is what is the value that they actually bring? And my worry is that sometimes they rather oversell and underdeliver. So be careful. The reason why the platforms are quite useful is because there's a lot of stuff in one place. And that should save you time and energy, because otherwise you've got to go and register in different platforms. However, depending on the type of organisation you want to go and work with, to be honest, we come back to your networks. Without your networks in place, then those jobs still don't appear on these platforms anyway. So it depends on the size company that you're actually going for as to whether or not where are they going to show up. And don't let anyone tell you that they have special relationships with organizations that will just come to them. I don't know if that really exists. Is there enough diversity at board level? Well, no, of course there's not. Not even remotely. There's not diversity, not just on gender, but on ethnicity, on age, and all of this sort of stuff. So all of your more regulated, bigger businesses are highly scrutinized on all of that. Your SMEs are totally different. And what I mean by that is that these are small businesses who are much more operational, need to get stuff done, and I just want the right person to come in and do it. I don't think they give a second thought to diversity. What they want is the right skill sets. So I don't have a major problem with, is there enough diversity on small boards? Because small boards are a different kettle of fish to say like your AIMS and your FTSE. So I don't get hung up with that one. If you guys are in the right place, talking to the right people, and you've got the right skill sets, you know, age, ethnicity, gender, and everything else just disappears out the window. I want you because you're what I'm looking for. But the other ones, you're absolutely right. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Right, let me just check time because we've got a few minutes left. Right, what else we got left? On the back of the D&I question, my industry is very male dominated, white and middle class. I envision as a challenge in securing a position. Any thoughts and tips on this? To me, do you know, if you show up and you've got the right skill sets and stuff, then I think people are going to look at you quite seriously, right? What happens is that a lot of people are just invisible. When you're running, if you've got a full-time job, you've got a family, or you've got lots of other different commitments. What happens is there's not enough time in this world to go and do this networking stuff. And that's why a lot of people are really invisible. Now, what happens is people confuse going for a full-time job with that of going for a non-exec role. Okay, they are not the same beast. They are different beasts. That's why I wanted to explain it to you in the beginning part. So what happens is if you're not visible, you don't exist. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but you just don't exist. So if you really want this, come back to your motivation. You've got to become visible. So this means we come back to, depends on the type of business, depends on whether or not you need to build your networks or do you need to get in front of recruiters. Platforms they can be very useful, and certainly dynamic boards I think is a great place to go and start anyway, because they are collecting a diverse database in order to be able to market specifically people out to create diversity on boards. So they're a really good one to go for. I hope that helps a little bit just in your thinking. Can you give an indication of pay scales? This is Sashi. Yeah, there's your variable for you. Crikey. They will go from a couple of thousand a year, I mean that, to lots and lots and lots of money. What would I expect you guys to be paid? Well, that depends on the size of the business. It depends on what their expectations is. It depends on what experience you want to gain. So you might get a couple of grand a year. It could go up to 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 grand a year. So if you're looking at an SME types of market, you're looking at 2.5 to say 20 grand. Probably their average is going to be more around about the 10,000 sort of mark, and you'll be expected to do at least 1, maybe 2 days a month on that. So the pay is not good, and that's why we always come back to motivation. Why are you doing this? So once you know what your motivation is, if the fee in itself should not be the driver, but it is an important aspect. I mean, I'm all for trustees being paid because I think it's ridiculous that people don't. So time is running out. Where can you go meet people from these worlds? Right, okay, well, Andrea, what a question to finish on. So this all comes down to you networking. LinkedIn is great for this sort of stuff. I have run out of time, and so that practical bit around how you go about networking. But if you come back to the slides, you'll see that in the slides, I'll give you those indications on what you should be doing. I'll give you the links and everything, so that will help on the platform side of it. But if you sort of think about it, once you decide on your market, then what you do is you jump onto LinkedIn, and then when you jump onto LinkedIn, you then start looking for these different connections, you connect with them, and you start chatting, and you start building these relationships. And you tell everybody you're looking for non-exec staff. But you've got to get your LinkedIn sorted out so that you make sense to them. I'm afraid, guys, we are done. All right. Thank you all so much for joining in and sort of staying with me. Link in with me, absolutely. If I can answer any more questions, I will do, but don't expect necessarily immediate sort of answers, but I will do my best. We'll make sure you get the slides on this one as well, and that list I was talking to you. In the meantime, have the most super week, and good luck with all of your endeavors and your searches. Okay, and the last slide before I forget, thank you guys, it's very kind for your lovely comments. Is that the last one is that your next virtual session is going to be on this overcoming stress and anxiety. And after what I've just put you through, you might want to join on this one. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.